There have been many heroes of the public over the years. Some have fought war, others have been to the moon. But there's one kind whose sole objective in life is to push boundaries never before achieved. These men and women risk their own lives for their obsession, and sometimes nature fights back.
On January the 4th, 1967, 8:46 in the morning, a boat called the Bluebird K7 raced down this lake over 300 miles an hour. But what happened on the return run? The whole nation into shock. It was a crash that nobody thought would happen, and after countless water speed records on the lake, Campbell had taken Bluebird too far.
In the mid to late 50s, Donald Campbell was a household name. Rich and famous, he was an interest to women and a hero to men everywhere.
This place was his swan song though, Coniston Water in British Columbia. Between the years of 1956 and 1959, he set 4 water speed records on this lake. Despite coming here for the first time in 1949, the first water speed record he set was actually at Ullswater, to be located 30 miles north of here.
He's away. Just another test run, says Donald. Bluebird's speed indicator can only register 200. But although she's nowhere near flat out, the needle's way beyond the end of the scale. He simply doesn't know how fast he's going. But the stopwatches do. 215 miles an hour. Back again for the homeward run over the measured kilometre. This time Campbell's holding her in. A mere 190, but still a long way over the record. Says the new record holder, I was almost embarrassed to hear I had averaged more than 200 miles an hour for the 2 runs. I wanted to leave this for my runs in America. That back is still troubling him. The final verdict, nearly 24 miles an hour over the old record set up by American Stanley Sayers 3 years ago.
Here at the Ruskin Museum, they have a whole Bluebird section.
In the Bluebird wing, they actually have some of the original parts recovered by Bill Smith in 2001. However, at this present moment, there is a team of volunteers rebuilding Bluebird for a 100-mile-an-hour run on the lake, and once it's finished, this museum will get the actual boat. They're trying to use as many of the original parts as they possibly can, but obviously quite a lot was damaged. This engine was the one they actually used during the 1967 run that lay underwater for 30 years. Another amazing thing they have here is the actual helmet that he was wearing on the day. This is Waterhead Pier. This is where the Bluebird base was, and this is an actual replica of what it looked like back in 1967. And I actually went here. That there is Pier Cottage, practically unchanged in 50 years. It's the place where the Bluebird camp was, and where they jetted her off into the water for her runs. I have here a list of all the water speed records set by Donald Campbell and Bluebird, and it goes like this: 202 miles an hour at Ullswater in 1955, 260 miles an hour at Lake Med in 1955, 225 miles an hour at Coniston in 1956, 239 miles an hour at Coniston in 1957, 248 miles an hour at Coniston in 1958, 260 miles an hour at Coniston in 1959, and finally 276 miles an hour at Lake Dumbleyoung in 1964. So it definitely has conquered the water, but at this point he wanted to emulate his father by getting a land speed record.
While bad weather at Coniston has been holding up his record attempt on water, Donald Campbell has been considering world records on land. With Leo Villa and the two designers, he inspects a model of Bluebird 2.
We're hoping that Britain will be the first to carry the world's land speed record to beyond 400 miles per hour.
At the Bonneville Salt Flats in America, on the very same track his father set his fastest land speed record, Donald attempts his own run at the very same title. While unfortunately it did end disastrously, Donald survived the mega crash, and just 4 years later in Australia, he had the golden opportunity to try again. While it was a magnificent achievement, there was no time to celebrate, as Donald had another little idea floating around. You see, nobody in history had ever set land and water speed records in the same year before. And on New Year's Eve, 1964, Donald went out for the historic double. This was Campbell's greatest achievement, and it was the one thing that his father had never achieved. The following year, American rival Craig Breedlove raised Campbell's land speed record to over 600 miles an hour, so Campbell's designers came up with a supersonic car capable of an estimated 800 miles an hour, but nobody was interested in funding the project, and this left Campbell with just one option: the K7. Campbell thought that if he could raise the water speed record, then he might be able to attract the interest needed to fund his supersonic car. At this point, the K7 was over 11 years old, and while it had been designed to crack the 200 mile an hour barrier, Campbell was about to see if it could reach 300 miles an hour. This really was going into the unknown. At 8:30 on the 4th, the lake was perfectly still, and Campbell went out for what would be his final run at the record. Very successful run down the lake, averaging 298 miles an hour and peaking at over 300. The record was well within the bag. He returned Bluebird round and started for his return run, but unfortunately his luck ran out. Just over there, Bluebird flipped. Despite being the undisputed speaking of the water, this day, January the 4th, 1967, will go on to be his legacy.
2001, a team managed to recover Bluebird and Donald Campbell from the bottom of the lake. Campbell was buried in the graveyard in Coniston, and they announced that they were going to rebuild Bluebird. Since then, they have been given permission to drive the boat at 100 miles an hour down this lake as a celebration. They tried to do it for next year as it marks the 50th anniversary of the crash.